Citrus County Planning and Development Commission meeting for February 3rd, 2022. If you'd like to join us at this time, I invite you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, please give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since this is the reorganization meeting of the Citrus County Planning and Development Commission, I will entertain a motion for Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Bramlett.
a motion for Chair for Robert Bass for the upcoming term.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Robert Bass. Are there other nominations? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you. You may finish.
I'll finish. I'll entertain a motion for the position of First Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Bramlett.
motion for Stacy Worthington, First Vice Chair.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Commissioner Worthington to be First Vice Chair. Are there other nominations? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for the position of Second Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, James Roy.
I have a motion for Jim Roy. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for James Roy. Is there any further discussion or further nominations? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, now?
Yeah, we can move around.
Yeah, they throw you right into the
I tell you what,
My feet are hot.
The first time I got nominated for chair and I had to
Second, you have to go right there.
go right here.
I know,
Let's see.
We're anchored over here.
Where am I going?
Ooh, you can sit on that. Cool kids.
That's it.
I think I'm going to go over here before
This is where I started.
Did you show her how to use the thing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you got it.
I have notes. Notes?
I usually turn that on and I leave the beep on because of the beep. Some people don't like it, but I like it because it tells when you shut it. And then right here, yeah, so it's just 5 minutes, 3 minutes, but then if somebody's done, you can just hit repeat and it'll set it up for the next person.
Okay. And stop it when you're done talking. They talk, them talking over it, right?
Usually like if they're beeping, if it's beeping,
Yeah,
it'll
lean
start
back.
running backwards for how much time they've gone over, then I just hit repeat, it'll stop.
Keep leaning back.
Catch all that.
I'm sure I'll have help. Drippy.
You think I'm capable of that machine?
I better get the notes out.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, you can do it.
The following Planning and Development Commission members are present this morning. We have Robert Bass, Chairman, Stacy Worthington, First Vice Chair, James Roy, Second Vice Chair, Richard Barnes, Michael Facemeyer, David Bramblett, Kurt Stone, and School Board Representative Chuck Dixon.
If any person decides to appeal any decision made by the commission with respect to any matter considered at this hearing, he or she will need a record of the proceeding, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceedings is made, which record includes testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. During the public input portions of the meeting, individuals are given 3 minutes, representatives of an organization are given 5 minutes. When anyone wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete a yellow form to hand to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number of the application for which you are speaking on the form. The yellow forms can be found at the podium by the door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker. Comments will be limited to the topic being heard. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the taped recording. This is an opportunity to come forward and address the commission on any issue that you may wish. Seeing no one, we'll move to minutes. I believe there are no minutes. Staff announcements.
Just congratulations to the new officers.
Thank
Nothing
you.
else. Thank you.
Nothing else.
I would just like to make one announcement. I just want to thank all of the staff. All of us commissioners are, grateful for all the work that you guys do, because without you, our job would be a heck of a lot harder. So I just want to, thank all of you guys. I know coming from the public sector, you don't always get the kudos that you guys should get. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's see. Ex parte communications.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulty this morning. With regard to the application before you this morning, have you had any ex parte communications you'd like to disclose? And we'll start with Commissioner Dixon.
None. Thank you.
Site visit.
Site visit.
Site visit.
Site visit.
Site visit.
Site visit.
None.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Our only application is V22-01, Civil G-Tex for Dinkins and Dinkins LLC.
Yeah.
We need our-
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is a variance request for a new car wash. The site lies on County Road 486, West Norval Bryant Highway, just east of the County Road 491 intersection, and is currently vacant. It is across County Road 486 from Wawa and Wendy's, and the applicant is requesting a two-part variance for the roadway connection onto County Road 486. This is looking east on County Road 486 with the subject parcel on the left. This is looking west on County Road 486 from the subject parcel. This is the approximate location of the driveway apron. The billboard in this photo is proposed for removal. This is a diagram provided by the applicant to justify their request.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Tom Sullivan, 301 East Pine Street in Orlando. I'm land use counsel on this variance request for Caliber Car Wash. I have a couple folks here with me this morning, Dan Brown with Caliber, and also Muhammad Abdullah, our traffic consultant. So let me start off by saying we prepared a short presentation for you all this morning, but in talking with Joanne, I realized we didn't get it to you in enough time to show you, but to share it with you this morning based on your ordinance, so apologies for that. But I think we can talk from some of the graphics that I just saw in staff's opening. So just to give you a little bit of background, Caliber is a high-end car wash operator, and they love this location at 46 and 491. And they're very much would like to become a contributing member of the Citrus County business community. I'm sure everyone here is pretty familiar with this area. Obviously, it's a growing area. I think you saw on a couple of the earlier photos of the area, there's quite a bit of development. You've got the Walmart across the street. You've got Wawa, and I think the Wawa has pretty similar access to what we're requesting here. We've been through some iterations with staff on this, and we certainly did try to work together on this. And honestly, we were hoping for their recommendation of approval, which I'm sure you would expect. But I guess we'll have to agree a little bit to disagree on that. And I want to say I do understand where they're coming from to a point based upon the current standards. But I think what's important to recognize, which the graphic on the screen shows you, is that current access to Circle K, which I guess has been there for a number of years, is really not ideal. I mean, we have, and I'm happy to pass it out or just kind of point out for the record, there's a easement going back to 1999 with shared access to that parcel for cross access, excuse me. So we could, under that, have our traffic go through there based on that easement, but that proximity to the intersection, adding that many more, I mean, our business, like a gas station, is based upon a lot of pass-by trips, but still, that, I mean, meaning cars that are already on the road, but having additional vehicles going through that one access, I don't think is ideal. So we had proposed, and I'll have our traffic consultant come up in a minute and talk a little bit more specifically about what we proposed and kind of different iterations of the plan that we thought would improve the situation. You know, just to give you a little bit of a preview, we kind of played around with the taper, added or extended rather the turn lane in kind of hopes of trying to work something out. There was I want to address something just with respect to the east side of the property. One of the later versions of our plan showed a shared access with that owner, and we did one of our principals of caliber did reach out, got in communication with the owner there, and unfortunately couldn't come to terms on an easement there. And it wasn't, I want just the committee to know, it wasn't because of caliber not being willing to be reasonable and have shared maintenance and just do everything in an equitable way and not add any cost to them. But they were looking, you know, to be candid, to get paid for that, and you know, we didn't think that under the circumstances that was fair. I mean, everyone's got to have access, you know, to operate a successful business, and we just didn't think that was fair. So we tried to work with the folks to the east. We think that'd be a better access point, and so really, you know, what we're asking for you all today is to allow the access where we're showing it on our property, but certainly with the understanding or condition that when that property to the east develops, which my understanding is that there's nothing imminent there. Joanna and I talked the other day. I know there, at least as far as we know, there hasn't been any development activity on that piece. Of course, we're here going through the process, so we have to deal with this now, and they don't. But we would certainly provide that cross access to them, stub it out, whatever's reasonable there, so that they would have access in the future. So just with that kind of overview, I'd like to ask Mohammed to come up and just give you a little bit of a feel from a transportation engineering perspective about why we think what we're proposing makes sense and is hopefully something that you all could support. So,
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, Commission, Chairman. My name is Mohammed Abdallah. Address is 3101 McGuire Boulevard, Orlando, Florida. As you heard from Tom, we prepared a traffic analysis and reviewed the proposed plans here to see you know, what is appropriate and what would work. Naturally, as is usually the case, you know, the book says one thing, but then reality presents its challenges, and that's when us engineers and planners and have to get to work and figure out. So what we have here is you know, a case of alternatives and what can work. The property has about 225 feet, 220 feet more or less frontage on the road. As you heard from Tom, there's an existing grandfathered right-in, right-out access at the Circle K, which is non-conforming and substandard based on your access management standards. But understandably, it's been there for a long time, and you know, it is what it is. As it sits today, it sits about 130 feet from the intersection, the signalized intersection right upstream, which is not ideal to say the least. I mean, that's a tough position, but again, it's a fact on the ground. So looking at the car wash site, we had proposed that there would be access at the easternmost boundary of the site given that we can't cross that boundary and go into the neighbor's property. So we push that access as far away from the intersection as possible. And what that would give us is roughly 350 feet, more or less, from the intersection to the access. With technical measurements, we'd be getting closer. It'd be about 380 feet, as it would be measured for the driveway spacing, the 440 that you would otherwise require from the intersection. But when measured from the adjacent access at the Circle K, which that access is non-conforming, then we would be just under 200 feet in separation between those two access points. Having said that, we looked at the possibilities. If there is no access at this site, there's no access to the east, and all that we have available to us is access to the west through the Circle K. We determined that that would be a much more detrimental type of condition than having a separate access and then joining or providing a shared access easement between all three properties. So the car wash property would provide for future access to the east and would connect to the Circle K in the west. The benefit there that would provide is any traveler, any vehicles in the Circle K who are having trouble navigating out of the access today would be able to come through the car wash site to get out further back behind the queue at the intersection. Whereas today they would have to sit there, either block the right turn lane or come out. And then in order to mitigate the right turn movement ahead of the intersection, we proposed that we add another 240-foot long right turn lane to serve the proposed driveway into the car wash. So by making these adjustments and improvements, we feel that that's, again, absent access that could conform with the 440 feet that would otherwise be required, since the property doesn't allow for that. These improvements are the best way to serve the property and also maintain the flow on the roadway, and in fact improve the flow on the roadway by reducing pressure on the Circle K access. Without this proposed access, we anticipate that all this pressure would go to the Circle K access. So in addition to what's there today, there would be an additional burden on that access, which would truly be detrimental to the operation of the intersection, much more so than having a new access to provide relief. And then we also looked at the area. This condition is actually not new to this intersection. To the west here, the Walmart property has this condition repeated, where they have, I guess, non-conforming access that is separated with turn lanes. And the reason for that, again, is to reduce the point load and kind of diffuse where traffic is coming out, so they're not all coming out of one driveway and creating a traffic jam there. So even though it didn't meet the 440 necessarily, it was a better plan than to stick just by the book to provide the additional access points. Same thing with the Wawa that is across the street from us. They have an access that is essentially would be identical to this, or this would be identical to that, I should say, where the driveway was added and the turn lane extended to accommodate for the turning movements and to not overburden the intersection. So with that explanation, I hope I painted a picture of what our analysis is or was and what our opinion is, and I'd be available for questions.
Any questions from the commissioner?
I have a question. I just wanted to clarify. I don't see it on the plat here or the design. Did you say you were going to extend the right turn? That would be on the east side in front of the adjacent property owner then?
And that's a great point. I was going to come up and clarify that. I appreciate that question because, and actually Dan pointed it out.
There is a pointer, if you want, there is a pointer. It's somewhat tricky to use, but.
I appreciate that, Denise. So it's really to the east, kind of where the the graphic on the screen gets cut off, but you were saying, Mohammed, it's a couple hundred feet at least, right? That we would extend that turn lane.
So that's basically the entire length of that property to the east, if those are all 200-foot property frontages?
It goes up about 150 feet into the adjacent property.
150, okay.
More or less, but it's all in the right of way, so it would not be encroaching on the adjacent property.
Right, yeah, just like the one is now,
Exactly,
obviously, right
exactly.
there now.
So the existing turn lane is about 410 feet, as you see there on the graphic. Unfortunately, as Tom said, we didn't get our presentation in time to
Yes.
show you the proposed. So that turn lane would essentially become a 650-foot.
But you're creating a median there, right? So it's really not, it's gonna be like a turn lane, then you have to come in and out and go around it, and then go back, right? Because I know that's happened before, where they put two turn lanes right beside each other, but then there was like a little median in it, and everybody gets in that turn lane thinking that they're gonna turn, and then they go, oh, no, I gotta get out and come back around,
Right.
if they're not going into the car wash, but they're turning on to 491.
So that's a detail, that's a design detail, if you will, Commissioner. So we may put in the median if that is determined to be the most appropriate treatment with the engineers, with the county engineers.
Okay,
And we may not. So the Wawa driveway does not have the median. The Walmart driveways have the median. So it's, and really it is a determination based on what movements are dominant and what movements are not. We, as the applicant here, I think we're open to either. We feel the turn lane extension is necessary. Either it's a exclusive turn lane that allows you to go into this site, and then if you want to go to the intersection, you would have to, you would have to go into another turn lane, or it can be a continuous turn lane that allows you to come in early and get to the intersection or turn into here. Either way, I think operates well and safely, as demonstrated across the street, whether it's at the Walmart or at the Wawa. So that becomes a detail we can work out with the engineers.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't see it also depicted there, the cross-access with Circle K, but that is the plan?
If you see the roadway, I know there's a pointer here, but I don't know if I figured out how to use it. Is this it?
It's the circle towards that one, yes.
Oh,
There
there
you
we go. Yeah, oh, look at that. I can have some fun with this. So if you see this access right there, this roadway, it's essentially, it's almost a frontage road that runs in front of the property as a whole. So the proposal, again, we didn't get our latest plans in time, but the proposal is to connect this across here. So this is actually connected to the Circle K, and then it would terminate at the property line on the east, so that when this property develops, there would be an availability for them to share this access as well. So there wouldn't be a need for another right in, right out access on the road.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do you need permission from the Circle K owner to connect that? And do you have it?
We have
No, thank you. Appreciate the question. Yeah, there's, that's why I referred to briefly when I was talking before. There's a easement from 99. Yeah, that talks about, it's what it says in the part of the easement that's relevant here, it says that it's, for vehicular and pedestrian access over and upon the existing paved driveway areas. So we could, under this document, I believe, knock that through. So this has been around, 20 plus years. with
Right.
that expectation. So that we have the right to do because it's of record already.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, might I? Was that document required when they did the Circle K that you know of? Is it a condition?
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, that timeline. It kind of feels like that's probably around the time that Circle K developed, but I don't want to say because I honestly don't know.
Well, I looked at the permitting, and so what is the date of the document?
It
It's
is
the 90s?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
recorded June 8 of 99.
So I think the gas station's been there since then. We have permits for them to demo the gas station and rebuild it in the current configuration from 2006. So that's from the original permitting of the gas station. Whether it was required or not, I don't know.
No, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions from the commission? I have two for your traffic engineer. Did you evaluate the intersection site distance from that driveway where you are now located, because there's a slight crest curve?
We looked at the site triangles, and we didn't see a site distance deficiency.
Okay, did you also look at stopping site distance?
Well, the site triangles at the intersection kind of cover that. So if you're looking at the required clear line of sight, that covers site distance for out and in at the intersection. That's the DOT site distance triangle. It covers both.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chair, if I might, if there's no other questions, if I could add a couple just notes as we wrap up, is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
No, I appreciate that. No, I think I really appreciate the discussion this morning, and I think one of the reasons I say that is that I think this does present a unique circumstance, particularly because of the fact that the Circle K is there, as Mohammed said, with the non-conforming access going back 20 plus years. So we think that's a unique circumstance that warrants the variance request here. And I wanted to highlight too that we're interested, as the county is, certainly in having safe access here. We don't want to have any problems with our customers coming on to and exiting the site, but we also want to have access in an appropriate location that will help us run a successful business here. Which I'm sure you all can appreciate. But we think that where we've proposed it, we've tried to work with the parameters that the code provides now. We tried to work with the owner to the east, as I mentioned, and that's why we're kind of here this morning. This was sort of the best that we could do, and now we're here just asking for your support. And I just want to kind of clarify, I guess what it is that we're asking for, which is the access, essentially where it's shown now, but I want to make sure that it's clear that we're also proposing that turn lane, which is something that we think is appropriate, and obviously there's a cost attached to that, but we would appreciate your support for that access location, and certainly with the condition of approval that we're required to do that turn lane. I think that's important that we commit to that. We're not just saying it just to everyone just to have a nice talking point. We want to commit to doing that, and then also the location of the access, we would expect that, we would be required to share that access when that owner to the east develops. I mean, we're not going to try to hold them up in the future. It's just we can only show access on the property that we control now. So I just want to make that clear. That's the ask would be the access in that location with a commitment that be shared with the owner to the east when they develop, and then the turn lane as well. So just to be clear about that. So. And again, if any other questions come up during the discussion that we can jump back up and answer, we're more than happy to. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. If we could hear from staff now.
And I will preface by saying I am not an engineer and I don't pretend to be, but I do have Cindy Jones here. She's on the staff report and she is here to talk about any engineering items. This obviously is an application for variance for several engineering access management points to the car wash. I did want to point this out. This is the area they just talked about connecting to the Circle K. There is quite the grade change there. There's a billboard in the way, which we know is going to come down. But they could connect, as they talked about, to Circle K, apparently via an easement. And this is the intersection area looking towards 491. You already know there's a lot of development here. I'll tell you, you do have a PUD coming to you soon on the northwest corner of 491 and 46, a large shopping plaza, somewhat equivalent to the one across the street at Walmart as far as size. And we are talking to a lot of developers in the Walmart shopping plaza for more development. So a lot of stuff is coming to this intersection. There's already a lot of things here. This is the actual existing turn lane. When you're looking down, you can see the Circle K connection. And of course, we already showed this looking west or east. This is the site plan in color. I'll compliment the applicants a little bit. They turned in an initial site plan that did not meet Land Development Code planning type standards, development standards. So They did work on that. This now meets the basic land development code standards except for access management. My first question to them was, where the heck is the stormwater? Well, it's proposed for underground, so that's why it's not here. They have added some pedestrian areas, some buffers, some parking. So as far as the general land development code, what I would review and my staff will review, that does meet that. And this is what you just saw quite a bit of. It had a lot of analysis from the engineers on. Now I'll show you in the staff report there are proposed findings if this application is to be approved. The idea of a temporary driveway has been there since the beginning. That was talked to them at the pre-app. Basically, they would allow this driveway right now. They do an agreement, so whenever the site to the east is developed, then this driveway may have to be removed at their expense, and they put in a connection across. That is still on the table, always has been. Engineering staff cannot support the application that they've provided. There's a lot of analysis from engineering in the staff report. But Cindy, I'll let you say whatever you want to, or you want to just answer questions, whatever's easiest for you.
I can answer questions, if you have any, or.
And we just heard from the applicant that they are offering a dedicated turn lane, so if this application is to be approved, we would add that condition.
Any questions from commissioners?
I just want to ask about the implied easement. You said could.
Right.
Does that mean will? Does that mean possible? Does that mean they have the 100% authority? Like, because I know how we deal with adjacent property owners, and then they go to develop theirs, and they say, "Hey, we're connecting," and they say, "Well, no, you're not." So, where does the
Cross access is required for development, but as an existing site, they do not have the obligation to make a cross access to this car wash at this time because they're already there. The car wash has to connect cross access, and they're doing that. The property to the east will have to connect cross access. Do they have to connect to Circle K? That is something that, you know, this board could mandate, but it's not, it's a private easement. We're not involved in that. Anything to add on that? Am I missing anything?
Well, they do have, I guess apparently an easement that's been in place.
Right, they said it
the
for since
20
1999, but I
20
think
years,
his
yeah.
question is, do they have to do it? And I don't think we have a mechanism.
when we say they, I'm talking about the Circle K.
Circle
because
K,
of course
yes.
it's Caliber. Because in my opinion, that connection is fairly important for this driveway, because I'm trying to rationalize allowing a driveway separation less than what should be at one of the what's probably going to be the most busy intersections in the entire county. And if you allow that cross access right there to the adjacent property, then that's going to relieve a little bit of that traffic that's going to go around and try and get into Circle K right there. So that's kind of important to me to understand and
Right,
know.
and I think that's a great point, and maybe the applicant could talk about that a little bit, but if they had the cross access to Circle K, they would not need this variance before you, in my opinion, that driveway connection would go away. Now, you heard their testimony that they did not want to do that they want their own driveway apron. At least that's my very
So you would
understanding.
prefer that they not have a driveway entrance at all? They have to go up to the one that's 135 feet away, pull in there, go up the hill, and then go to their car wash?
Do you have a preference? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know that it's a preference. I
No.
believe it's a requirement of the LDC.
It's already a non-conforming driveway, though. I get that part, though. It's been there, it predates, right?
The existing driveway is non-conforming.
Right.
You would be allowing a new driveway that's non-conforming.
And
So
the only
you're
reason it's non-conforming is because there's one there that's already non-conforming.
There's already one there that exists.
Right, that's non-conforming.
That's not part of the equation.
It's not?
No, because it's been allowable, it's grandfathered, it's.
Right, but it wouldn't be allowed if they came to do it today.
Correct.
Right.
But this is the issue that we get into with cross-access and people saying, remember, from years ago, everybody wanted to, have a fix to cross-access. And the fix was, well, record something in the public records that says that when they build later, they'll have to do it. Well, this is the exact circumstance that we're dealing with. Somebody allowed this years ago, and now you have to now. So do they have to connect? I would say yes. And that's going to be.
When you say they, who are you meaning they?
Circle K.
Okay.
So it's up to the easement holder, the estate that is going to benefit from the easement, which is this property, has to make the Circle K abide by their promises in that easement. So it's not up to the county to say to Circle K, you have to connect. It's up to these gentlemen here to say to Circle K, here's my easement. You promised to let us do this. You guys need to let us do this. So that's not up to us. That's up to them. And I'm pretty sure they're probably going to force the issue. I mean, why wouldn't they? The only reason they perhaps might not is if you grant the variance.
Okay,
For the moment.
so the easement or the cross connection is made, and now there's an adverse impact on the operation of Circle K. As for instance, they lose a parking space or two, or it adversely impacts them.
You're speculating.
Okay, thank you.
And if there's the connection made, I'm going to assume that everybody, the businesses, want this to work, right? They want to have a profitable business. They don't want people from the county to say, I'm not going to use this because it's difficult for me to get in and out. Cases that we're familiar with, many people don't use the Dunkin' Donuts in Inverness because they don't want the rear end of their car sticking out on 41, right? So from a planning perspective, that might not have been a good idea for that business. These folks are putting a lot of money into making sure that this works. Everybody wants it to work, right? Circle K wants their business to work. They don't want people to say, I'm not going to Circle K because I can't get in and out of it. Many of you have been in and out of that Circle K, and you have your own thoughts on whether it works or doesn't work. We all want this to be very nice. We all want it to be like the Wawa across the street that you can go, you can come up by the park, you can go around the park, you can go to Wendy's, you can go to Wawa. It works wonderfully. They want it to work wonderfully, I think. I mean, nobody opens a business and hopes that it doesn't work. So they're probably going to level that hill. They're going to get rid of the billboard. They're going to make it nice because they all want it to be nice.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Vaismeyer.
this question is for Cynthia or whoever has the answer. Did I understand someone to say that ideally, in a perfect world, with the cross-access to the Circle K, traffic flow would go into the Circle K and then to the proposed project? Did I hear that? Or did
Yes.
I not hear that?
Yes. So I was going to explain. So the way our code is set up, we have spacing standards. And so if a commercial development comes in and they have enough road frontage to put in a driveway that's separated from the other driveways on the same side of the road, then they get their own driveway. So in this case here, the applicant said this has about 220 foot of frontage. The separation criteria for their driveway to the Circle K is 245 feet. They don't have enough road frontage, okay, to get their own driveway. The code then has another provision that allows up to a 20% reduction of that requirement. And they went through that process and submitted that to the county. Because we know that sometimes there's situations where you need a little flexibility in where you're going to place a driveway apron. So when the county looked at that time, when that was submitted to us, the site plan that was submitted showed cross-access to Circle K, cross-access to the other site with the driveway on the adjacent eastern property, and a driveway for this site right at the taper of the turn lane. So when you have a turn lane, you have a 50-foot taper and then you begin the turn lane. So they had their driveway within that taper. County engineer and other county staff looked at it, and we felt that, well, not we felt, the way the code is written is if you have access via cross-access, then you don't get a non-conforming driveway. So the engineering division director denied the request for the 20% waiver or reduction of that 245 to 196. So then where we go from there is one or two things: interim driveway, which is a temporary type of driveway, or they come for a variance, which is what they've done here. Is they applied for a variance to allow the driveway in this location. So we do have a process that we go through in reviewing these, and many times they don't get here because they've been able to be worked out through the permitting process. as established in the code. Maybe that answers your question.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
I have one. In your opinion, would the adding of the turning lane that they're proposing reduce the risks for access management to that site?
Well, what they're proposing is we're proposing a full, so a turn lane would be a length of 240 feet. So they're proposing a turn lane for their site, which would be that full appropriate length. But what happens when they do that, is this the right button? There it is. Thank you. So what happens is, maybe it might be easier. So what happens is the length of the turn lane now between this taper, this turn lane here coming in to the existing gas station is reduced. And so the safety concern engineering division has is not necessarily for the gas station's driveway, but what happens as a result to the convenience store driveway. Their turn lane length is reduced below the minimum.
That turn lane is also a turn lane for northbound 491, not just for the Circle K.
Correct. It's a full.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just want to make that point. That's all.
Yeah. Right. The driveway for the Circle K is in the middle of the turn lane, and I did want to maybe explain one thing. So. When the Circle K was built in the 90s and then rebuilt in 2006 through building permits, it's been there for a long time. At that time, this whole intersection was 2-lane roads. And so when the county went to widen and 4-lane the road, we gained right away to the south. We stayed away from this gas station because anytime you do road widenings, you worry about doing a taking and giving business damages to a commercial site. And so we moved to the south. We tried to avoid that, and gave them a driveway apron, which is what you have to do when you do road widening projects.
Any other questions?
I just have one. If we deny this, what's their alternative?
So their alternative is we do have some conditions in the staff report. The alternative is to allow them to have a driveway in this location, but it's not a permanent driveway. It would be an interim or temporary driveway. And the county does have an agreement, which is included in your packet, that would allow them to do this driveway apron in this location. And when a cross-access or another driveway, when a driveway apron meeting standards is installed, let's say to the east, or a cross-access to the gas station is established, the county has the ability to tell them there's a access meeting standards that has been installed and you need to remove this existing driveway and revise the turn lane and do what's necessary to bring it up to code. So the option is an interim driveway. And that's always been an option. It's in the code. We normally have something from the applicant indicating that they're unable to gain access via cross-access. They send us emails or give us information from the applicant that they were not able to come to an agreement. We do have that to the property to the east, although to the west, to the Circle K, we do have that easement.
Mr. Chair.
Could I just ask something?
County attorney first.
Cindy, I'm not understanding why we would give a temporary driveway access if that cross-access, why is Circle K not being required to connect that cross-access and thereby not needing that temporary driveway or this variance?
I guess Circle K would, if they had their cross-access, if they established that to Circle K, then by the code they would not be granted a driveway. Yes, you are correct.
So have discussions occurred with Circle K to say you guys have an established easement, you have to allow the cross-access that you're aware of?
I have not. I don't know if the applicant has.
So why did staff offer the temporary driveway to them without knowing whether they pursued cross-access with the Circle K?
I don't know that I was aware of the easement. I remember when they mentioned it, it kind of triggered a little something, but I don't think I was aware of it. The
So
easement.
just right off the bat, staff said you can have temporary driveway access without knowing? I mean, I'm just asking, because it seems to me that the Circle K should be required to connect.
And they should be, yes, I agree.
Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Stone.
If this driveway that they're proposing was constructed, they said that they're looking for a extension to the left-hand turn lane to the east.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, yes, and I don't know,
Yeah.
I think, do we have other, no?
The right-hand turn lane, isn't it?
Right. Extended to the east.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
the
sorry.
right-hand turn lane.
So I
extended
need to
the
go,
east.
this one, okay, I went the wrong way. Did we have another site plan? Whoops.
If
All right, so
if
they
that
are
tur-
proposing to extend the turn lane to the east and add a median here so that it would actually be two turn lanes, one turn lane for the car wash and then another turn lane, for a separate turn lane for the intersection for the Circle K.
and who would construct that?
The applicant would be
They would
responsible to do all those improvements.
Okay, I have to say that personally, I really dislike the medium curb.
Me too.
On the left side of their driveway. That creates, I'm sure everybody has ended up in the wrong lane, trying to make a right-hand turn onto the main road and getting sucked into some business instead. So if I was to support this at all, that median would have to go and just make one continuous
Turn lane.
right-hand turn lane. That's correct.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Let's just say, so I'm looking at, this is the one, and I read the staff report where they initially, and it was approved with the adjacent property owner and the access meeting the conforming lengths, and then they were gonna share access there. If that particular, design was instituted, would the right-hand turn lane be required as well as that? So if they shared access and the access was built on the east property, like they had proposed at one time, does the right-hand turn lane still need to be installed
The right-hand turn lane is.
into that driveway?
Is required based on the number of trips generated by a site, not necessarily whether they have cross-access,
Okay,
so.
I don't know that you're understanding the question. You're talking about the additional turn lane that he's offered today to add.
correct, right. Would that be required if they didn't add if they didn't have access on their site, like this picture shows, if it was on the east property adjacent, would that right-hand turn lane be required?
Just one second. Can you put up the aerial so that we all can understand what the question is? That. So you're talking about the additional turn lane that is being offered that would be on that light colored grass.
Correct, that's not shown on the drawing right
Right.
now.
And so what I'm trying to say is that in our code, turn lanes are, the requirement for a turn lane is based on the number of transportation trips that are generated by a site, based on the AM or PM peak. If it's more than so many trips.
And does this site require that? Do you know, did you find out what the trips are?
I don't believe it would require it. It's a small site. I think they're offering it as a solution to the issue that they have.
Okay,
Yes, but it is based on trips.
Their
It's not
traffic
based on
analysis
access
says,
points.
78 trips during PM peak hour in their traffic analysis.
and what's the requirement for a turn lane?
It's saying in here that they would not on their traffic analysis. I don't know what our turn lane analysis is.
The county would do one too?
No, we just have a chart.
You have a
just
chart, yeah.
Right, yep, you would at least look at the chart though, right. So we're thinking that it would be no, that wouldn't need it.
I think so.
Okay.
Commissioner Worthington, I think you had a question?
Does engineering have any concerns over the cross-access with the non-conforming driveway at Circle K as the applicant does? Because, you know, we already have a non-conforming driveway. It's difficult to get in and out of there as it stands. We're now saying the alternative is for them to, that's the plan, that's the alternative that they can do by code. But would engineering have any concerns over that approach?
No, that's something that would be required. Cross-access is always a requirement that we have.
Any other questions? I have one. So what they're proposing, they are reducing the existing right-hand turn lane that works for both the Circle K and to travel north on 491. Is the county, how concerned is the county with now reducing that right turn lane? And does that now create a hardship for Circle K? Because now their required right turn lane has been reduced by what's being proposed. So are we creating a new issue that we shouldn't have to have by this driveway?
No. Circle K is required to connect. We're not creating any hardships on them. The county's not creating anything with regard to Circle K. Circle K is creating a problem if they don't allow cross-access, because they're supposed to.
But if this plan goes through as is, aren't we creating an issue for that existing right turn lane? We now have reduced that from what it currently is, so now haven't we created a new problem by, again, if this is approved?
That's why staff is recommending against this.
I just want to make sure we're all squared away here.
Is the existing driveway into Circle K going away?
No.
No.
The driveway itself would stay the same. There would just be a cross connection. I mean, the ideal situation, if you look at the code, the whole idea is to create like a frontage road. Right? I think, I'm not sure which of the gentlemen referred to it. They said it's like a frontage road. Ideally, there's going to be a road all the way going back along those properties, further. So would that turn lane be required? They might have to add on to the existing turn lane as things develop further down the line. But we can't answer today what's going to happen on the Conquest property. So we don't know what trips are going to be generated on the Conquest property because we don't know what's going there. So to ask that question, it's kind of a speculation on staff's part as to whether it would be required or not. But that bump out would not be there. So it's not like you're concerned, Commissioner, that they're going to be in a turn lane and then bump out and then have to get back in a turn lane, because that won't be there. The only reason that's there is because they're being allowed to put a permanent driveway rather than a temporary. Now, if you allow this, tell them cross-connect to Circle K and put in a temporary driveway, that bump out won't be there. Because that'll just be a temporary driveway. It's kind of like, we'll let you keep it here until the Conquest property gets developed, and then it's going to be one turn lane and one frontage road, if you think of it that way.
Frontage road is something like at the Wawa and the Wendy's?
I think I would, a frontage road to me is more like the racetrack at 44 and 491. You know how you have to pass the racetrack and then you go back? In front of the daycare and that to me is more like a frontage road. The code says that you're required to have a frontage road or cross-connecting driveways. And that language, I'm not quoting it exactly, but it's basically, you either got to put a frontage road or you got to put the cross-connecting driveways. So to me, it is really cross-access, but it looks like a frontage road. But a real frontage road is more like the racetrack, what racetrack constructed there in front of the daycare.
And I would add that a lot of the cross-access is interconnected parking lots.
That's the word. Sorry.
So if you think about the racetrack in Homosassa, although they each have their own driveway, which doesn't work well with this situation, but you can go to racetrack, you can go to Dollar General, you can go to Taco Bell, you can go to the next store, you can go back and forth through interconnected parking lots to any of the sites without having to go back out onto the main highway, which reduces the possibility of accidents. That's the whole point, is reducing accidents. driveway to the south, you can kind of barely see it on here, that goes to the Wawa. There is one driveway that is shared by Wendy's and Wawa. So there's the turn lane that comes into Wendy's and Wawa, and it's to one driveway. And you can go through interconnected parking lots from Wawa, through Wendy's, through the county's trailhead, and out to the street. And that's the ideal thing, is interconnected parking lots, reduce number of connections to the roadway.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I have one question, as I guess more for staff. If this driveway was granted as a temporary, who would come along later and say, take it out and make an agreement with the next door neighbor?
It would be the concrete, when the concrete property is developed, if this board sticks to the code and the concretes come in, this board at that time would say, you have to connect to the cross access. And we know in the past, this board hasn't always been as strict with following the codes, and perhaps would let that happen without requiring the cross connection. But it's gonna be when that property develops, the concrete property is not going to be able to develop unless they negotiate, work out, somehow deal with the car wash, and that's when that would be removed. But that's the concern that we have. Remember, I don't think all of you were on this board, but there was many different ideas put forward. Well, how do we do this? And that's the issue. It's going to be recorded, it's going to be required, but technically, if the car wash says no, or they can't reach negotiations, it would require the county to go to court and make them do it. And that's why the issue of cross-access, just like with the berm and swale, we always go back to that, well, what happens if somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do? And that's always, you know, my concern when we're drafting policy is I can't do anything to make them do it other than go to court and say, you had a promise in a contract, in an easement, in an agreement, whatever it is. I have to go to court and say, you promised to do this, now you got to do this. I don't care if it costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars to tear up that driveway, you have to do it. And that's where people have to have the fortitude to enforce the code. So that's, the easy answer is, yes, they have to. The hard answer is making them do it.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then, you know, why do we put that burden on the adjacent property owner, Concrete, to make a resolution for their driveway? Why don't they make an agreement with the next door neighbor for an easement for their driveway farther to the east now, rather than approve this as a temporary basis? They could make their agreement that they want, come back with a revised plan that meets the code, and they have their easement with the adjacent property. If that's going to be the issue farther on down the road, why kick the can? Why not require it now?
I understand that
I think that's
argument
what
you're
they,
making.
that's what they initially,
Right, there was,
that's what they initially were.
Right, well,
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
they,
we got the letter, right?
maybe they need to go back and talk to
That was my question. That was why I asked, would that right-hand turn lane be required? Because I don't know how much it costs to create right-hand turn lanes, and, you know, they're gonna create the entrance anyway. If it's on the adjacent property, the money that would be spent to create the right-hand turn lane, maybe
Right.
the adjacent property owner could absorb some of that or enjoy some of it. I don't, obviously, I mean, it's just the thought process. That's where I was kind of going with that thought.
I don't think the county has ever denied at least a temporary driveway. I mean, that would be a very, but they do have the cross-access. It'll be interesting to see how this board votes.
any further questions?
Oh,
We haven't done open to the public yet. We're kind of jumped ahead a little bit. That was kind of staff's time, and now it's open to the public.
Right.
sorry.
That's all right. We're all,
You've not been here for a little while. You're out of practice.
I'm sorry.
no,
We missed you.
I've been on the screen.
She's been listening.
The public portion of the meeting will now be open. If there is anyone present in favor of the application who would like to speak, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes to speak, and an organization has 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board. If you have any, excuse me, any documentation that you want to be entered into the record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary. Please come forward. Please come forward. Thank you. Recording secretary.
Thank you.
Good morning. Tracy Rains, 101 Northeast 16th Avenue, Ocala, Florida, 34470. I am with the property owner, Dinkins and Dinkins, obviously in support of this project. We're trying to make money selling the property. Developers are trying to make money developing it. And the county's obviously going to make money with tax revenue, services, and other things. It's a win-win-win situation, and we're in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? Anyone else in favor of this application? Please come forward. Seeing none, is there anyone present opposed to the application who would like to speak? Please come forward to the podium.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good
Bill
morning.
Hunter, and I live in Pine Ridge, just north of this intersection, a busy intersection. And I don't want to preach to the choir, but you know that the Suncoast is going to terminate about 2.5 miles to the west. And the Turnpike Extension corridors, the two southern corridors, come in about 4.5 miles to the north. So if the Central Ridge wasn't already destined to grow, as you know it is, there's going to be a lot of traffic in this area. And that right-hand turn lane today provides a deceleration space for somebody coming along supposedly at, I think, 50 miles an hour. And we all know that that's just a limit. Today, that right-hand turn lane provides deceleration, but in the future, it's going to provide stacking. As the traffic growth on that road increases, the stacking for entrances and turns is going to grow. And it's a county road. If a problem is created today, the taxpayers may be on the hook to solve it in the future. So your decision today is very important, and I don't envy you because it sounds like you've got two options. Approve or deny the variance, or approve or deny a temporary. I came with a couple of questions, and Commissioner Stone, you asked one, and Attorney Lynn kind of answered it. What forces a temporary driveway that may have been in existence for a couple of years? It's now convenient, everybody's used to it, and it's expensive to remove. What forces that to be removed? And I think Attorney Lynn did a very good job explaining that. But my other concern, and I'll kind of leave with that, Commissioner Bramlett, you brought it up, and several of you have mentioned it. That bump out, that's terrible, terrible. As a resident, you know, who would be whipping down Norville Bryant, I probably will remember that bump out is there and not pull in too quickly. But a lot of people won't. So whatever you decide to do, please don't let them put that bump out in there. And the longest turn lane you can possibly get us, that's what I would ask you to do. So thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone else speak in opposition? Seeing no one? applicant has an opportunity to rebuttal any comments that were made.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Yeah, just a couple points. Just one quick note with respect to the last speaker. We're fine with removing that bump out. I just want to make sure that's clear. I think we said that earlier, but that I just want to say that on the record and be happy to agree to that as a condition. But the main point I want to make is that we feel strongly about a couple things here. One is that if we only have access through that Circle K access, it just doesn't work from both a business standpoint without having a driveway on our own property, and also from a safety standpoint, putting that many trips in that one access point. And you can hear from Muhammad again on that. But so I just want to make that clear. But having said that, we are willing and I think are able, based upon that prior easement, to connect to Circle K. So just to be clear, we, number one, would be willing to connect to Circle K to kind of spread the access points out a little bit. But it would be essential to us to have the access as it's shown now. With respect to, whether that's temporary or permanent, I know that's in your discretion on the conditions. I'll just be completely blunt with you. I mean, we'd rather it be permanent, but if it had to be temporary and we had to deal with the owner to the east in the future on potentially relocating that, then we would deal with that. I mean, just so you get our 2 cents on it, like I said earlier, we did reach out to them. We couldn't work something out. It's not like we didn't try to. So, in the future, we're at the table now. We would incur the cost of putting in the access. We'd incur the cost of putting in the turn lane that we talked about. And, for them later to come back and potentially, cause us to have to relocate it. It's less than ideal. But I do want to be clear, if that's, and I know Denise mentioned like there hadn't been any precedent for denying the temporary access. If that's what we would be able to get your support for, we'd appreciate that. But we would rather it be permanent. So again, just to kind of recap, we would agree to cross access to the Circle K, but it would be essential that we have our driveway, whether that's temporary or permanent. And that's kind of the best way I could boil it down. And Mohammed, do you want to add to anything I said just as we're wrapping up?
Yeah, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Just want to highlight the why we feel, or we really have, when we analyze this, why we think the cross-access into Circle K as the only access to this property would be detrimental, not just to the property. It would be really detrimental to the intersection. Essentially, you have a driveway. Your code says 245 feet. You have a driveway today that sits right up against the stop bar of that intersection. You can see on the aerial right there that once you have 4 vehicles queued at the intersection, which happens every cycle, once you have 4 vehicles queued at that intersection, the driveway to the Circle K becomes essentially inoperable. It's, you're waiting in the driveway, or as a driver, you're putting yourself across the right turn lane and blocking the right turners coming through. Very dangerous situation. And to go and add an additional burden, an additional pressure at that driveway, I believe is extremely detrimental to the operation of this intersection. So this is why we're saying, in view of the conditions at this site, and notwithstanding what the code says, but in view of the conditions on the ground, to only have access to this site through the Circle K driveway would be detrimental, and not really a solution. That's why the secondary driveway is necessary. And then I would submit further, the second driveway, the driveway as currently proposed, would help relieve pressure off the Circle K driveway with the cross-access connection. Because then, as I stated earlier, if I'm a driver and I'm coming up to the intersection and I see a long queue, I'm more likely, if I'm a safe-minded driver, more likely to go back and join the queue at the end instead of try to push myself out into the road to make my way into the intersection. Some people do that anyway. I understand that. But you're giving the driver the opportunity to make the right decision. as opposed to forcing everyone to go into a much more difficult situation, which is a lot closer to the intersection. And this is why, you know, we really feel that while the cross-access is available and that driveway is there, it is less ideal than the other driveway, you know, so the solution is actually worse than the problem, if that's the solution we choose.
Thank you. All right, return it back to the table for discussion and a possible action.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
me. Imagine,
sorry about that.
imagine a world wherein Circle K recognizes the business benefit of closing their driveway access and creating a much more usable access, perhaps over there where this one is. And just imagine how nice that intersection would be if you could go in at the car wash and access the Circle K and not have all of those conflicts there. That picture would never happen if this is allowed. Imagine the Conquet property, who will have to connect in order to, if this board holds firm with the code, they can't develop that property as it stands right now without connecting to that cross access. Why that property owner is not being business minded about this decision and connecting now, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me, why that property owner is not seeing the benefit of having this developer create a wonderful situation there for them. I don't understand. It makes no business sense to me why that property owner wouldn't, because in the future they're going to have to do it. So why not work collegially with their neighbor to create a situation that all of the residents of Citrus County could benefit from? But anyway, failing that, it would be nice if Circle K, we can't make Circle K close that because it's non-conforming, but imagine how much better their business would be if people don't shy away from using that. I mean, there's many people that don't use that driveway because they're afraid of just what the engineer stated. So Circle K needs to consider how nice it would be to come in that one access. Just Denise.
Mr. Chairman, I
Imagining,
totally agree.
just Denise imagining a wonderful intersection.
I totally agree. I think that getting the entrance to whatever business further from that intersection back east is be safer for everyone. Because I imagine there are people that come out of the Circle K trying to go west onto O'Brien, which is silly. And I think that other entrance would be great, they could connect. And they could go in like Wawa, and they could make a U-turn to go to the other property, and it would be safer for everyone.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I think everyone sitting on this board today realizes that that Circle K access point is really poorly designed. And, I mean, but it is a non-conforming driveway, and I agree with Ms. Lynn, wouldn't that be nice? But that's not really what we're here to figure out today. You know, I look forward to hearing from engineers on this board and making my decision, but I think they're asking for a variance, and I would like that clarified. Are we asking for a variance for a permanent driveway? Are we asking for a variance, or is the temporary driveway something we decide, or is that something that they can just simply apply for? But I understand engineering is saying that they don't have concerns with that cross-access through Circle K. I'm here to tell you that that driveway is very poor, and having all of that traffic go through that driveway is not an ideal situation for this business or for the county.
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mr. Faismeyer.
just some thoughts. I think all of us would like to see Caliber locate in this area. I think all of us would also like to see this to be a safe access, or there to be safe access to this business and others. I personally have quit patronizing that Circle K because the ingress and egress is terrible. And I don't want us to do anything that will make the congestion in that area worse. I don't think it is in the best interest of the county to force primary access to Caliber Car Wash through the Circle K, which is already a traffic nightmare as far as I'm concerned. I can support this with cross-access as required. I cannot support it with a bump out as designed, but the applicant has said that they would remove that. I'm okay with that. And I think it will need an extended turning lane to get my vote. Mohammed very accurately said what the book says and what reality says are two different things. Well, this is a different thing. So it's up to us to decide which is best. They're my thoughts. I'd like to see this business here, but I'm only one vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Facemeyer. Anyone else like to?
May I answer Ms. Worthington's questions?
Absolutely.
So the temporary driveway, staff would approve that because that's what's, I mean, we do that all the time with the agreement that's in your package. So that wouldn't require this board's action to get the temporary. With the cross-access and the temporary would not require any action from this board. And then the temporary, it would be up to the Conquy property to, when they develop, then the temporary would go away, and hopefully at that time, well, it may go away. I mean, hopefully at that time, maybe the Conquy's property would, maybe they'd share that. Instead of tearing it apart, or maybe they might just have to make it a little wider, or do something. So hopefully that answers your questions.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so I'll just echo Mr. Facemeyer's comments and Mr. Abdullah's. The thought of the traffic exclusively coming in and out of the Circle K for the cross access there with no driveway access to the property, the subject property, that's not a good thought. And I love Miss Lynn's idea. Maybe one day in the future, I mean, Circle K, they could gain some parking. That parking lot is a disaster as it is already. So I would be in favor of this application. I would prefer that it be on the adjacent property owner, but like Miss Lynn said, we don't know why that guy's not being business savvy. He's just thinking about his wallet at this particular time, but that's understandable. A lot of people are that way. But I am not in favor of the bump out on the turn lane. I know right there on Highway 19 where BB&T Bank and Home Depot, and that's a state road, but still the same thing happened. They had the BB&T turn in for the Applebee's and all of that, and then the Home Depot and further down, and I did it, and I lived on that road and traveled it all the time. Many times I would pull in there and be going to Home Depot, and then I'd be like, oh, now I have to pull out and get. So they eventually just did away with it, and they made the turn lane longer. So that's the point that I would be in favor of. A permanent driveway too, not because I want to just follow that up because I believe the property, the Conqueve, the eastern adjacent property, they would be required to have a 245-foot driveway separation. And I don't have a measurement, but just looking at the plat, it appears that property is only about 200 feet on frontage anyway, so they would have no access. They're going to be forced to use this access anyway.
Only if this board follows the code would they be required. But I could see a situation where this is allowed permanently, and then that property comes to be developed, and they come before this board. Whoever might be sitting on the board might at the time say, meh, we'll grant a variance, and then we're going to have 3 driveways. So you're just relying on people being consistent.
But you just are speculating right now, like you shut Mr. Bass down earlier for speculating. I mean, that's speculation to say that they would come here and that this board would agree and grant the variance.
I'm hoping this board doesn't, but
I hope it wouldn't as well.
I always want this board to be consistent and follow the code.
This is one of those though where we have 8 findings of fact and 4 of them are true and 4 of them are false. It's that's why it's been one application for an hour and 20 minutes.
Commissioner Stone, did you have
Mr.
a
Chairman,
comment? Yes.
I think we need to be very circumspect about granting waivers against our standards, particularly going against the engineering department. You know, we don't want this road to turn into State Road 200 up in Marion County, which is what you get when you have driveway after driveway after driveway. I think if they can get approval for a temporary driveway there, and part of that would consist of a cross-access to the convenience store to the west, then I think we should not act on this. We should just dismiss it, let them go about their business with their temporary driveway access, and we'll see what happens when the adjoining property is developed. But I don't see where we have we get no benefit by us approving a temporary driveway for them. That there's no, particularly when they can do it by a separate application to the building permit department. So why are we here if we're not going to uphold the standards? Particularly hearing from everybody about what the development is going to be at this particular intersection. You know, we just as easily end up with a driveway after driveway after driveway like 200. So I would not be in support of this. I would not be in support of even rejecting it. I think we should just dismiss it without action.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Attorney Lynn.
Sorry. I often get chastised for speaking too much at these meetings, so I'm sure it's going to happen again. But perhaps adjoining property owners may watch this tape and may know about what this board does and may reconsider their positions that they've taken if this board is inclined to not go along with the variance and perhaps continuing it if that's what the applicant wishes, to have further negotiations or discussions based upon your comments, then maybe that might be a good idea.
Yes, Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I kind of agree with Commissioner Stone. I don't think that going against a county engineering department would do the county and our residents any favors at all. And knowing that intersection and the traffic that it's got now, I can only imagine what the traffic is going to be like in 3 years. I do agree with cross-access. I believe in cross-access. I believe it works. And I think it relieves traffic from the main roads coming in. But I'm not in support of this application the way it is.
Thank you. Looking at the application, I'm not in favor of it either. We seem to have a little bit of conflicting stories. The applicant said that they have made an effort with the adjacent property owner, and that I think the words were something like he was held hostage by the adjacent property owner. We have a letter from the adjacent property owner said that they were willing to give them 0, so I think we have some differences in views on what's happening with the adjacent property. I think there are options that exist for the developer, and I think that he has not taken all of them, and if we were to allow the temporary driveway, as our attorney said, how do we enforce it down the road? That becomes an issue. We've seen that in several other cases, you know, the Berman swale type of situation. So I think that we need to, well, I'm going to vote against this application. I just cannot support it, and, you know, as other commissioners have said, the engineering department has taken a stance, and I agree with their stance, and I think we need to support what staff says. With that, are you all set, Ms. Lynn?
Mr. Commissioner, just one thing I want to add.
Yes.
It's not that I'm supporting the engineering department. I'm supporting our land development code.
Yes, I should have said that. You're correct.
Not necessarily
I apologize.
the engineering department.
I agree. I should have said that, and it's my mistake. Yes, we are supporting the land development code. And with that, Ms. Lynn?
Sometimes time constraints don't allow for continuances, which is unfortunate. But I did want to make sure before you make any decision that you understand that the offer for the turn lane is based upon a permanent grant of that driveway. I don't think under the temporary you're going to get that turn lane. So that is the only difference when I said that they could get the temporary from staff. I don't know if the temporary is it's not gonna include that, the turn lane in front of the Conquet property. Just wanna make sure you guys understand that and recognize that sometimes due to contractual obligations, continuances might not be allowable. It's very disappointing in this situation if there's a denial because we all know that the time limit to come back is quite significant, so that's unfortunate.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Facemeyer.
If this were to be denied today, if this application were to be denied today, and Caliber says, okay, we're abandoning this project, and a dissimilar business came back and applied with site plan that was similar to this, may be a retail establishment. And if it's denied, this configuration, would that prohibit a future applicant?
It wouldn't prohibit
from doing the same thing?
It wouldn't prohibit a different applicant. This applicant couldn't come back without making substantial, but a different applicant, I don't believe that same provision would apply to a different applicant. But you never know if a different applicant would be willing to make the improvements, but.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'd just like to say that hearing all the discussions, I support Mr. Bramlett's conclusions as well. I think this non-conforming driveway presents a hardship for this property owner, and that the applicant has worked with the county to provide the turning lane, which would allow a safer access at that point. Like Commissioner Bramlett said, yes, the frontage on that property to the east is 200 feet, so they would have to get cross access right there. I think having everyone going through, we already know that Circle K driveway is a nightmare. I don't go there. The parking is bad. It's difficult to get in and out of there. The idea of trying to, because they could do that, that's their option. That's what they can do, and as a business, that's probably what they will do. I just think we should support this application for variance. In this, the code is the code, but there are situations where we have to look at the circumstances for each application, and in this instance, I support the variance.
Thank you.
With conditions.
Again, I just have to reiterate that I cannot support this, and I think we come back with the comment that Commissioner Stone said that, are we going to create a 200 where we have driveway, when there is the opportunity to not have the driveways, with the applicant possibly having additional conversations with both of the adjacent property owners. So again, I will not support this. Anyways, with that, is there a motion that someone would like to make? No one? Commissioner Worthington, you look like you're biting.
I just
the
wonder,
bullet.
like, while she's finding that, like, so they could put this driveway access directly next to it, just flopping it over and be conforming. Like, on the adjacent property.
Right.
It would just be completely next to it. 100%, we're talking about 50 feet. We're talking about 50 feet to help clean up that turn lane right there, to clean up, add an additional existing turn lane, add more access into the Circle K, make it easier for the people to get out of Circle K, to go to the west. It's 50 feet is the difference between what's allowable and not allowed. They would be, if they had that site with the adjacent property and that property owner agreed, we wouldn't even be here today.
Are you saying the Conqui property?
Correct.
So the Caliber property could build could enter into an agreement with the Conqui people to put to build the driveway
Right,
on the
we know
Conqui.
that,
I
which
mean,
is what they initially submitted, but they didn't agree, the Conqui people. We know that, but we can't sit here and make them agree. So
No,
I'm
we
just trying to
can't.
determine inside of my head if 50 feet, do I think the difference between 50 feet at this particular intersection is gonna make or break? And in my opinion, I don't think 50 feet is.
We're all entitled to our views on this.
I
and-
understand,
and-
I'm just
and I-
stating mine, that's what I do.
Right, I understand that, and I think that by having it flipped at 50 feet, we resolve that issue of having the correct turn lanes for both.
For sure.
The
I would
existing ones,
prefer
so-
it be the way that it's supposed to be,
Right,
but they,
and-
they can't get agreement with the owner, with the property owner.
And again, as I said earlier, though, there appears to be two different sides. We have their position was that they couldn't, and we have the adjacent property owner who said that.
Well, they couldn't because they wouldn't pay him money. And I don't know that I would want to pay him money either. I'm creating a driveway, I'm improving your property. Allow me to use your property, it's gonna be to the benefit of you anyway. Why do you want me to pay you to make your property better anyway? Because now that property becomes a little bit more saleable. As a real estate agent, if they came to me with that eastern adjacent property, I would go, hey, look, there's access already here. You don't even have to pay for that. We got cross access already ready to go. That makes that property more valuable. So there's a little bit of a difference right there with
Right.
the $0 offer and the offer to just build it.
All right.
But for one facility, like you said, 50 foot, it's not that big of a deal. But if we have the facilities across the street and up and down the road and up, all around this facility, where other people, I mean, the Conqui people could come up and say, I don't want to share a driveway with them for whatever reason. I want my own variance. You gave them one, why don't you give me one? And the guy next to him, well, we gave them both variances. I would like one too. It's not our job to make any facility that they want on that piece of property developable. Ours is to enforce the land development regulations and see if there are reasonable deviations from it. But we're not here to guarantee that any type of development on any lot can happen.
Thank you very much for those comments, Commissioner Stone. I think you brought up some valid points. And with that, do we have a motion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to do so, but I think we better walk through these conditions. Because condition 4, the non-residential driveway shall be installed as an interim driveway and a temporary driveway agreement and restrictive covenants approved by the Board of County Commissioners. Now, I thought that process was separate from what we're doing here, so I don't understand condition 4.
Condition 4 is allowed by right. Y'all don't approve it or deny it. It's in here if that's what you want to do. That's what engineering's recommending if you want to approve this variance. Condition 1, based on your discussions, if you decide to approve this, the non-residential driveway apron shall be located as shown on the site plan, date stamped received November 30th, 2021, with removal of the concrete bump out into the turn line. That's been a discussion of the people that are supporting this. Condition 4, that's up to you. That's what engineering's recommendation is only as a temporary if you choose to approve it at all.
Thank you.
Okay. For the purpose of a motion, the Planning and Development Commission finds application number V-22-01 consistent with the Citrus County Land Development Code and is in keeping with the intent and policies of the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan, and that this board approves with conditions just read of the application based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition with the following conditions which we just read.
Second.
And are you supporting, I'm scary, condition 4 or no?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Removal
Without condition 4.
Without condition 4, and then condition 1 is reworded. Sorry about that. Excuse me.
I have a
Second
second.
from Commissioner Facemeyer. All in favor?
Hang on.
Oh, I'm sorry, conversations?
Right, I just want to make sure because we talked about we talked about adding a condition or wording that would say to not include the bump out.
We added it in.
Right, that was
I
in
think the
condition number
applicant
one.
Testified to that.
That's
Right,
that's
I
what
just
we
did, I wanna make sure that it's clear,
That
cause
was-
I
That was
see,
condition number one, and Ms. Worthington supported that removal.
okay, alright, no problem.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Can I have a show of hands for all in favor? And opposed?
Can we do a roll call so I've got better record?
Absolutely.
Barnes,
No.
Worthington,
Yes.
Bass,
No.
Royce,
Yes.
Facemeyer,
Yes?
Bramblett,
Yes.
Stone.
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, pardon me, I'm new at this.
Hey, I got the clock right.
Good. Any other items to be brought before us? Michael, any?
Commissioner, or
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes.
I have a question for staff, or Joanna or Michael, whoever wants to address this. Over the years that I've been on this board, I have consistently talked about traffic concurrency that does not exist. Would traffic concurrency help us better make a decision on an application like this, if it existed, Michael or Joanna? Or is it, would be a non-issue?
I think concurrency in this issue would be enough. If we had it, you know, it would have to meet concurrency, which is an operational or level of service volume versus capacity issue. I think we'd still be in the same situation here.
But would concurrency help us with the decision process
In this particular.
in any way?
In this particular application, I'll just say that they have a traffic analysis in here that says that nothing's failing.
Okay,
So, in this particular situation,
okay, all right, thank you.
That's gonna help you on roads that are failing.
Okay,
This intersection, these roads are all
yeah, brand new, yeah, or new.
newish.
or now, wait till things come in. Jumping in to let you know, your
gonna-
next application, you've got a next meeting, February 17th, you have 3 applications. Just a look ahead, on March 17th, Mr. Sherman is bringing forth an amendment for waterfront setbacks and stormwater. That's scheduled for March 17th. We did dust off what this board reviewed and very much deliberated in 2018 about waterfront setbacks, so that will be put before you. You'll have that language as well.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
I have one more thing.
Sorry.
I just wanna take the opportunity to chastise those who are doing the chastising for, anybody that wants to talk and give any input into these meetings, whether it be Miss Lynn or anyone else, because all of the input that is taken in is internalized between all of us. I love the way that this board communicates back and forth, so if there's anybody out there that's chastising anybody for talking too much, this is for you.
Okay, we'll take that.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So we have 20
Second.
minutes to go save our
Yeah.
audience.